Let's cross over to Tareq Abu Azzoum, our correspondent in Deir el Balah in central Gaza. While that presentation, Tareq, was happening by the Israelis, we were also showing live pictures of what's going on across Gaza right now. The Israelis are talking about crossings being open, aid going in, and everything's just fine. Yet there were huge black plumes of smoke hitting the Gaza Strip as their presentation was underway at The Hague. Just bring us up to speed on what was going on this last hour.
Well, all what Israel has said was completely contradictory to the realities on the ground. They have been contacting with members in Rafah crossing. They have been confirmed that nothing has entered the Gaza Strip from Rafah and Kerem Salem crossing borders in terms of humanitarian aid. Only what gets into the territory just before the Israeli military incursion to Rafah was one fuel truck to the UNRWA had been delivered, and that absolutely reflects how much Israel is working to face truth and to even to change facts on the ground as they continue their unrelenting circle of bombardment across Rafah and in the north in Jabalia refugee camp. Now, the United Nations have been responsible for getting all kinds of aid in the previous periods that were completely pre the invasion of Rafah, and we have been insisting on the fact that any potential military incursion of Rafah will be a big blow for all humanitarian efforts being made on the ground to mitigate the aggravating humanitarian crisis. And within the past couple of hours, more intensification of bombardment by the Israeli military in the north of the Strip in Jabalia refugee camp, as battles did not witness any kind of end till now, as the Israeli military is demolishing complete residential neighborhoods one after the other in light of their ongoing efforts to seize all kind of military control on the north of the Strip, as till now the Israeli military tanks are still surrounding the entrance of Beit Hanun town in the north, as bombardment continued as well in Beit Lahia town in the far northern western part of the north of the Strip, amid ongoing hovering of Israeli military drones, as you can hear right now at the background in Deir el Balah. This is where Palestinians have been told to seek refuge, and it's going to be a safe place for them, but yet more casualties among civilians are getting into Al-Aqsa hospital from different parts of the middle regions as bombardment there continued as well.
Tareq, Israel gives the impression that this is a voluntary move of those that are in Rafah, but this is really forced displacement, isn't it? They're warning people, you need to move or you're going to die.
Well, it's not only related to the controversial evacuation orders being passed by the Israeli military. They have been using this under intense firepower. It means that it's sending a clear reminder for Palestinians: if you did not leave, you will be killed, not you're going to die only, because that is the military approach that being used by the Israeli military in the initial months of the war when they invaded the north of the Strip. Now they have been expanding the fighting to reach Khan Yunis, and right now ending up in Rafah. Families and civilians in the north of the eastern portion of Rafah district have been receiving warnings to flee. They managed to flee. We are talking about more than 600,000 Palestinians fled Rafah since the beginning of the operation there, and at the same time there are still thousands of people in Rafah in the middle and even in the western areas of Rafah district, which is close to Al-Mawasi, and that's absolutely a very devastating scenario if Israel is trying to smoothly expand the military incursion of Rafah city, especially in light of more growing even warnings for people in the middle area, specifically on the vicinity of Al-Kuwaiti hospital and the Shabura neighborhoods, as medics, as we have been confirming before, that they have been receiving calls by the Israeli officers to leave the area because hospitals will no longer be safe places, even for medical workers.
Tareq, briefly, I just want to ask you one final question, because we know that Israeli surveillance zone is in your vicinity, and based on what we've just heard at The Hague, I just want you to clarify for our viewers, are the crossings open or closed? Has any aid come in? Is Israel, in your opinion, and the sources that you're talking to on the ground, abiding by humanitarian international law and looking after the Palestinians in Gaza? And the field hospitals and mobile clinics that the Israelis just talked about in The Hague are fully staffed and have lots of medicine. Can you just briefly tell us what your opinion of that statement is?
Well, to make it clear, Sohail, now, both Kerem Abu Salem and Rafah crossing are closed. Now, from the Palestinian side, the Israeli military is taking full control as Egypt refused that Israel will be responsible for conducting and running a Rafah crossing, and they are calling for an independent Palestinian entity to run the border and to allow for further aid to get into the Gaza Strip. Now, Kerem Abu Salem crossing is under the Israeli control initially, and they have been also challenged by the settlers' attack on aid convoys that are getting into the Gaza Strip pre-Rafah operations. But since the beginning of the operation, no aid gets into the Gaza Strip throughout the southern crossing borders of the Strip. In the north, there was a new point that Israel has made in order to allow for aid to get into the Strip. And since the establishment of that point, only a very limited number of trucks get to the people in the north. And since the expansion of the fighting and the new operation being launched in Jabalia refugee camp, no aid get to the people in the north. So what Israel has been saying in the International Court of Justice hearings is completely contradictory to what we have been going through and feeling on the ground. We did not see any aid get into the Gaza Strip. There was more growing appeal from the United Nations about the importance of reopening all crossing borders to avoid any kind of famine could be looming in the horizon. And mainly Palestinians are grappling now to get food. What only get into the Gaza Strip are 52 commercial trucks that were inserted to the territory in coordination with the Israeli side. They're all gone to the private sector, and they are right now sold in the Palestinian market with the skyrocketing prices. So that's all the reality on the ground, as Palestinians till this very moment are struggling in order to get their basics, life-saving supplies. And they are saying that the new maritime and floating dock could not be a proper effective alternative for land routes that could be more helpful than the maritime one that was recently established in the middle area.
Tareq Abu Azzoum there for us in Deir el Balah with that Israeli surveillance drone above his head. Thanks very much, Tareq. We'll check in with you later in the day as well.